Money isn't just about numbers. It's about psychology. Welcome to Mr. Yogi Language today. We'll explore the psychology of money by Morgan Housel and uncover how our mindset shapes financial success. Let's dive in.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're going deep on Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. And I gotta say, I'm pretty excited for this one. We're not just talking investing strategies,
Right.
It's more like how our brains work when it comes to money.
Exactly. And it's great. We've got a really insightful review of the book and a super helpful summary. I gotta say, most books on finance, they get so bogged down in the technical stuff, but this one's different.
Okay, so what makes this book so different? I'm looking at these sources here, and it seems like Housel isn't just giving us another how-to guide, is he?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me is that the book uses stories, like 19 short stories. It's almost like reading Aesop's fables, but for personal finance.
So instead of boring lectures and complicated formulas, he's using storytelling to get his point across.
Right.
That's really cool. No wonder the review said even teenagers could understand this book.
And that's a big deal, right? It's not just for the finance gurus out there. The review made it clear that the lessons in this book apply to everyone, no matter how old you are or your background with money.
I'm sensing a theme here. Both sources seem to agree that Housel's main point is that success with money isn't really about being a math genius. It's about mastering the mental game, like the psychology of money.
The soft skills, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's less about crunching numbers and more about understanding why we do what we do with money, like how we react when the stock market crashes or why we just can't resist buying that thing we totally don't need.
Oh, yeah. Those impulse buys.
I've been there. And speaking of which, the summary highlighted how important it is to control your emotions, especially when the markets are all over the place. Yeah. I think that's a big part of what Housel's getting at.
Absolutely. He's basically saying that we got to learn to recognize our emotional triggers and develop some strategies to deal with them. It's not about ignoring our emotions, but learning to make good financial decisions in spite of them. It's kind of like that old saying, think before you act, but with money.
Yeah. Makes sense. It's almost like having a financial game plan, for those moments when you feel like panicking and selling everything. But okay, if it's not a step-by-step guide to investing, what is this book actually offering?
Well, it's not like a typical how-to book, but it gives you this timeless wisdom that can apply to anyone's financial life. Things like understanding how powerful compound interest is. Even if you invest small amounts, consistently over time, it can lead to some serious growth. It's like Einstein said, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world.
Oh, I love that quote. I've always been fascinated by that concept. Slow and steady wins the race.
Exactly. And speaking of that, the book also talks about the trap of lifestyle inflation. You know how it is. You get a raise and suddenly you feel like you need a bigger house or a fancier car. Housel warns against constantly trying to keep up with the Joneses. He says it's more important to align your spending with your values.
It's so easy to fall into that trap,
yeah.
Though, I know I have, a new raise and boom, I'm thinking I need an upgrade. But I'm curious, the review kept mentioning luck and risk. What's Housel's take on those factors? Especially when it comes to financial success.
That's where it gets really interesting. He doesn't shy away from the fact that luck and risk play a huge role. He actually uses Bill Gates as an example. Bill Gates had access to computers when he was really young, something that a lot of other brilliant people at the time didn't have. That access, plus his talent, played a big part in his success. It really makes you think about the role circumstance plays in all of our journeys, our financial journeys.
Yeah, it's kind of like that saying, it's better to be lucky than good. But of course, it's best to have both.
And it really challenges that whole myth of the self-made millionaire, doesn't it? It's a reminder that there are broader societal and systemic factors at play, and success is usually a mix of individual effort, talent, and some good luck. It's definitely a more nuanced view than you usually see in these types of books.
So it's not just about working hard and making good choices, but also acknowledging that sometimes things are just out of your hands. It's really making me rethink how I view financial success, and this is just the beginning. Okay, before we go too far down that road, I'm curious about something else the review mentioned. This idea that there's a difference between getting rich and staying rich.
Right, yeah.
What did you think about that?
And, that distinction often gets overlooked. Getting rich might involve taking big risks, being more aggressive with your investments. But staying rich, well, that's a whole different game.
So what's the secret to staying rich then? What does Housel say?
He really stresses wealth preservation, careful planning, and what he calls financial conservatism. It's about moving from a growth mindset to one that's more about sustainability.
So finding that balance between excitement and security, right?
Yeah.
Knowing when to push the limits and when to play it safe.
Exactly. And that requires a whole different set of skills and a different way of thinking.
Wow, this is a lot to process. It's like reaching your financial goals is one thing, but then the real challenge is holding onto that wealth and making it work for you, for the long haul.
Right. And that's where understanding the psychology of money, as Housel argues, becomes even more important.
This is fascinating. But before we get too deep into all this psychological stuff, I'm kind of curious about something. The review pointed out one potential downside. It said the book mostly focuses on stocks and trading, which might not be everyone's cup of tea.
You're right. The review did bring that up. Some readers might feel like those topics are a little too specific, especially if you're interested in other areas of finance.
So what about the folks who aren't really into the stock market? Is there still something in this book for them?
I think so, yeah. The review actually addressed that pretty well. It said that even though the book talks about stocks and trading, the main message about financial psychology, well, that applies to everyone.
So even if someone's not like day trading or anything, they can still get something out of it.
Absolutely. We all make financial decisions all the time, right? I mean, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
Budgeting, saving, even just deciding what to spend our money on, all that stuff is influenced by how we think about money, our relationship with it.
That's a good point.
And that's what makes this book so valuable. It gives us the tools to understand those everyday money decisions. Housel's ideas about our emotional biases, the importance of figuring out what enough means for us, and how to make sure our spending matches our values. Those are lessons we can all use no matter how much we know about investing.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like we might not all be Wall Street wizards, but we all got to navigate the world of money in one way or another.
Exactly. And the book gives us a way to understand those choices we make and make better decisions, more informed decisions, no matter what our experience with investing is.
It's like he's giving us the tools to analyze our own money habits. Figure out the why behind what we do with our cash.
You got it. Now, speaking of those insights, let's dive into some of the key takeaways from both the summary and the review. One that really hit home for me was this idea of defining enough. Housel really challenges us to think about, what does enough actually mean to us, financially speaking?
Oh, that's such an important point.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught in that more mindset. Like, we're always being told to achieve financial success, but no one really tells us when to stop and say, okay, I have enough to live a good life.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where a lot of people trip up. They're always chasing the next financial goalpost. They never really feel satisfied. Housel says it's crucial to figure out what enough means to you personally. It becomes this guiding principle for your money decisions.
So it's not just about stacking up money. It's about knowing when you've reached a point where you can live comfortably and, actually enjoy your life. That's a powerful way to look at it.
It really is. And it connects to another big takeaway, the danger of lifestyle inflation. When our income goes up and our spending just naturally follows, we get a raise and all of a sudden we need a bigger place to live, a nicer car, more clothes. It can be a tough cycle to break.
Well, I know exactly what you mean. I totally fall into that trap sometimes. Get a little extra cash and bam, you're thinking about how to upgrade your life. It's like you're chasing that next level of comfort instead of appreciating what you already have.
That's exactly what Housel's warning against. He's all about conscious spending, really being mindful of where your money's going, making sure it aligns with your values and your definition of enough. It's about asking yourself, do I actually need this thing, or am I just trying to keep up with some imaginary standard?
It's like buying that shiny new gadget might feel good in the moment, but it won't necessarily bring you long-term happiness or, make you more financially secure.
Right. And, speaking of happiness, another really cool thing the book explores is the emotional side of investing. The review really emphasized this, how our feelings can mess up even the best financial plans.
Ooh, tell me more. This is something I struggle with. I know I'm supposed to think long-term, but when the market takes a dip, I just want to panic and sell everything.
That's totally normal. We're all emotional creatures, right? And those emotions often lead us to make irrational decisions, especially when it comes to our money.
So what's the solution? How do we stop our emotions from taking over our finances?
Housel says it's all about recognizing your own emotional biases and then figuring out ways to deal with them. Maybe it means taking a step back when things get crazy, talking to a financial advisor you trust, or just having a plan in place to guide your actions during those emotionally charged moments. So you don't make any rash decisions.
That's a great idea. It's like having a financial emergency kit, a set of actions you can take when you feel overwhelmed or like you're going to make a bad move. I like that analogy.
It's a good way to think about it. Now, this all ties back to a theme that both the summary and the review talked about: the power of patience and long-term thinking, especially when it comes to investing.
Oh, yeah. I remember that from the summary. It emphasized how investing consistently, even small amounts over a long time, can really pay off thanks to the magic of compound interest. You know that saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
That's perfect. It's all about delayed gratification. Understanding that the payoff from being patient and disciplined will eventually be bigger than any quick gains you might get.
So it's about playing the long game, trusting the process, even when it feels slow. It's a mental shift, though, isn't it? We live in a world of instant gratification, so cultivating that kind of patience, that's got to be tough.
Oh, it's definitely a challenge. But the book really makes you believe it's worth it. And it reminds you that real wealth is usually built slowly and steadily, not through those get-rich-quick schemes you see everywhere.
So it's about being consistent, staying informed, and riding out those ups and downs that always happen in the market. That makes sense. But we can't talk about investing without talking about risk, right? That seemed to be a big part of the book, too.
Oh, absolutely. Risk is a part of any investment, and Housel doesn't pretend otherwise. He tells readers to be honest with themselves about their risk tolerance, understanding that there's no such thing as a completely risk-free investment.
Good point. It's easy to get caught up in the potential for big returns and forget that there's always a downside too.
Right. And if you just chase those high returns without understanding the risks involved, well, that can have some pretty bad consequences.
So it's all about finding that balance between going for growth and protecting yourself from potential losses. But how do you even figure out your risk tolerance? That seems like a very personal thing.
That's where self-awareness comes in. You have to really think about your financial goals, how comfortable you are with things changing, and your overall financial situation. And remember, your risk tolerance isn't set in stone. It can change over time as your circumstances and your goals change.
So it's not a one-time thing. You have to keep checking in and adjusting as you go.
You got it. And that's where diversification is key. Both the summary and the review mention how important it is to spread your investments across different types of assets so you can reduce your risk. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right, like create a safety net for your investment. So even if one area doesn't do well, you're not totally out of luck.
Exactly. It's about building a balanced portfolio that fits your risk tolerance and helps you reach your long-term financial goals.
This is all so helpful. I'm already starting to rethink my whole approach to money. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier. The book focusing on stocks and trading. I'm still wondering how much of this advice applies to people who aren't actively playing the stock market.
That's a great question, and I think it's a really important takeaway from this whole deep dive. It's funny. That's actually the cool thing about this book. Even though it goes into investing, the big ideas, the stuff about how we think about money, it applies to everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. We make financial decisions all the time, right?
Right.
Every day, whether it's, deciding how much to save or choosing between buying something you need or something you just want at the store, even planning for a big purchase. All of that is affected by the psychology of money.
That's true. I never really thought about it like that before. It's not just about Wall Street,
Right.
It's about how we handle money in our everyday lives.
And that's what makes this book so useful. It gives us the tools, the mental tools, to understand those everyday money decisions. Housel's ideas about our emotional biases, figuring out what enough really means to us and aligning our spending with our values. Those are lessons anyone can use. You don't have to be an investor.
Yeah, it's like he's saying money's a part of life, whether you like it or not. So let's figure out how to manage it in a way that works for us. So it doesn't control us.
Exactly. And that leads to another important takeaway, the idea that financial well-being, it's not just about the numbers.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more.
The review talked about this too. It pointed out how the book really emphasizes finding contentment and joy in other areas of life, not just focusing on money.
I like that a lot. It's easy to forget that money is just a tool. It's supposed to help you live a good life. Sometimes I get so focused on, being financially secure that I forget about all the other important stuff. Spending time with family and friends, doing things I love, giving back to the community.
Yeah, it's easy to lose sight of that when we're constantly being told to chase financial success. But Housel reminds us that real wealth, it's more than just your bank account. It's about having a balanced life where your financial goals match up with your values and, actually make you happy.
So it's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah.
Being financially secure, but also living a life that's full of good experiences, relationships, and purpose.
Exactly. It's about understanding that money is just one piece of the puzzle. And the psychology of money helps us see how that piece fits into the big picture of our lives.
I think that's a message a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah.
We all want to be responsible with money, but we also want to live a life that has meaning.
For sure. And that's where understanding how we think about money comes in. It helps us make choices that are good for our wallets and good for our souls,
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have a completely different perspective on money now. It's not just about, getting rich, but it's this force that shapes how we think, how we feel. It really affects our lives.
Yeah, and that, I think, is what makes this book so special. It's not just about managing your finances, it's about understanding yourself.
I like that. Well said. Now, as always, we like to leave our listeners with something to think about. So here's a question for you. If our relationship with money is really all about psychology, like this book says, what are your personal beliefs about money? And how do you think those beliefs are affecting your financial decisions? We really encourage you to take some time to think about that. And hey, maybe even check out The Psychology of Money yourself. It's a really interesting read with some seriously valuable insights.
Yeah, it's worth it. Understanding our own financial psychology is a big step toward making smart choices. Choices that can lead to a good financial life and a happier, more fulfilling life overall.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, deep divers, keep those sources coming and stay curious.
Money decisions aren't just about math. They're about mindset. That's it for today's episode. If you found this discussion helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content that helps you improve your English while learning valuable life lessons. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode.